Hi, everybody. Alan Arnette here with another podcast and the blog on alanarnette.com. It is Sunday, April 27th, 2025, and this podcast is the weekend update for the Everest and Himalayan climbing season this spring. Well, it's been another busy week on Everest. Drones going down, icefall collapsing, but the ropes got to Camp 3. Some people tagged 7,000 meters on the Lhotse face, and thus far there's been 374 permits issued to foreigners on the Nepal side, but only 48 on the Tibetan side, which is a big, big shock to me because this is the first time since 2019 the Tibetan side has been opened, fully opened, unrestricted. Anybody can come that qualifies. But I thought we'd get near the 300 person limit that the Chinese have on their side of the mountain, but looks like we're not going to come anywhere close to that. So 48, maybe 50 foreigners. Maybe there'll be some more because, as we've talked about many times, people come in later on that side because the camps are higher, makes the overall expedition time a little shorter. So, I won't surprise me to see it tick up some more, but it's going to be nowhere near what I thought it was. So, but teams are actually moving in. Columbia, I know their team moved across the border. Kobler and partner, they also are moving across the border. So everybody's on their way to get to that side of the mountain. But haven't heard yet if the ropes have even been fixed or if the Tibetan rope team has started on that side. It wouldn't surprise me if they have, because normally they go ahead and they start earlier than on the Nepal side, and also they typically are the first ones to summit each season. But we'll see how it all shakes out. So on the Nepal side, teams are there at base camp and they're training. And I want to talk just briefly about training. I've got on the blog a couple of quotes from different companies, Madison Mountaineering and Adventure Consultants, talking about how they're training. What happens is that the Icefall, or the Sherpas for the teams, they set up like a little mini obstacle course there at the base of the Khumbu Icefall, and it's in kind of the broken up section, so it's up and down. So you have some nice little ice climbing to do on maybe 20-30 foot walls. They'll put a couple of ladders across some crevasses, but basically everybody has a chance to practice their Jumaring skills, walking across a ladder with crampons, also just kind of getting a feel for being at 17,500 feet. So you may say, wait a minute, Alan, why do they need to practice or develop skills? They should come to Everest with all those skills already. I don't disagree. However, to be realistic about it, how many people have an opportunity to cross a ladder in any other place other than on Everest or some of these 8,000 meter heavily glaciated peaks? Certainly not down in South America unless you're way off route. On Rainier, there's a couple of ladders that go across, so that could be an opportunity. But for most people, you just don't have that experience. The same thing with using a Jumar on a fixed line. That's kind of unique to the Himalayas, and so I think it's okay. You don't want to be in the ice fall for the first time and cross the ladder for the first time, never ever having done it before. So again, they spend a couple of days there just kind of honing the skills and making sure everybody is, ready to go. I know that before I went on my first Himalayan climb, my first Everest attempt, that I knew I was going to be crossing the ladders. So I went to Home Depot and got a big old ladder, big old whatever, 20-30 foot ladder, put it in my backyard on a couple of chairs and put on my 8,000 meter boots and crampons and walked across it with no fixed ropes. How about that? I've got a picture of me doing that on this blog on my website at alanarnette.com. And you can take a look at that. I also have a picture of me crossing one of the ladders in the Icefall for the first time back in 2002. So, hey, another thing that came out this week was that according to the article in the Kathmandu Post, that there's been a bill that's been registered in Nepal's upper house of parliament on April the 18th, and it set forth a whole slew of new requirements. Remember last year, the Nepal Supreme Court issued a bunch of rulings that were kind of a duplication of other ones that's been, coming and going. As I jokingly say, I call it the silly rule season, because primarily that these rules, they get passed or they get announced They never get enforced, and actually they very rarely get implemented. Again, on the blog, I've got this chart that goes back to 2013, and I've got marked in green the ones that got implemented, and the ones in white never got implemented. And it's an eye chart test. You can click on it and see all of it. But some of these new rules are kind of interesting. And so one of them, probably the big one that gets a lot of people's attention, is that similar to on the Chinese side, Nepal now would like to require that every Everest permit holder has climbed a 7,000 meter mountain. Okay, so they have to get a 7,000 meter mountain. So that opens up a lot of questions. Do they have to have summited it? Can it be any 7,000 meter mountain, or does it have to be a Nepal 7,000 meter mountain? If it's only in Nepal, then think about that. Most people use Denali and Aconcagua to get them ready to go to Everest. And so if all of a sudden now you've got to go climb like Himlung or another Annapurna South, for example, that's over 7,000 meters in Nepal, that's going to drive the expenses way, way up. And I think they're going to see a massive drop in business. And there's a case study for this. Back in 1995 and 6, they tried to propose the same thing, but they said a 6,000 meter mountain, and business cut in half. The operators screamed, they rescinded the rule, and life went on like it has been for the last, whatever, now 30 years, 35 years. So, I don't know. I like the rule. I really like the rule. I like the experience requirement, but I just think they need to make it open for any mountain in the world. Another clause in this new policy is that it makes it mandatory for any helpers on any expedition to be all Nepali citizens. That means the sitar, the high altitude guides, the porters, anybody has to be a Nepali citizen. So does that mean that if you are not, if you're an American citizen or an Austrian citizen or a New Zealand citizen, that you can't work? Okay, that's gonna take out a lot of operators, a lot of long-time operators. Apparently, the intent behind that it's a works program to keep Nepalis employed. But the fact of the matter is that it's a very high percentage, 60, 70, 80% of all Everest summiters are already on Nepali teams. We've seen that shift happen for the last 12, 13 years. So I don't really see this as something that has to be put in place. All in favor of Nepali, taking care of their own country and running their own businesses, more power to them. They've proven to be very successful, but you don't need to eliminate the competition in order to protect your country. At least that's my opinion. Another thing that's got some teeth to it, I guess, some meaning to it, is that currently every team has to put up one garbage deposit of $4,000. That's one $4,000 fee for the entire team. They're talking about now replacing that with a non-refundable garbage fee of an unspecified amount. That's going to go into a pool to help remove the trash off of the mountain, which is another good idea. But I don't think the $4,000 refundable garbage deposit really had any impact at all. In fact, what they should do is they can do that one, but then also remove the liaison officers, which adds zero value and haven't for years. And that's been something everybody's been talking about. There's about, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 12 different rules. I've got them all listed on the website. When they're going to go into effect is 100% dependent upon whether it gets passed by the parliament. Remember, this is a proposal, and I'm seeing headlines all over the worldwide media that says Nepal implements new rules to make Everest safer. And once again, it's the silly rule season because most of these never get implemented, as I show in that chart. That's again on the website, so you can take a look at that. Last week, let's see what happened. So the route fixers from 8K Expeditions, they began fixing their Lhotse face. They got up to Camp 3, and they could be at Camp 4 set by the South Col by the time you listen to this. And if the winds stay low, maybe they'll even make the summit this next week. More than likely, it'll be a few days later, after maybe the beginning of the following week, that they actually get to the summit. But they're moving really fast and making great progress. High winds have kind of slowed them down a little bit. So that's been one of the issues that's been happening right now throughout the Himalayas, is It's been a pretty windy spring. I haven't had any really good reports in the route conditions. I have one Summit Coach client that told me it's taking between 5 and 10 hours to go from EBC to Camp One. 5 to 10 hours, that's a pretty wide range, but also that's pretty typical. And the first rotation is always the hardest because you're not acclimatized. You get much easier as you do more of them. However, another change that I'm seeing this year is that many teams are only going to do one rotation. Now, most of those have done Lobuche or Island Peak, so you can count that as a rotation up to about 20,000 feet. But back in the old days, 8 years ago, that typically teams would do three rotations, maybe even four. You went to Camp One, came back down, you went back up to Camp Two, spent a few nights, came back down, you went back up and spent a night at Camp Three and came back down, and then you did your summit bid. Those were your three rotations. These days, a lot of teams are just going to Camp One for a couple of nights, then they go spend 3 or 4 nights at Camp Two. They'll maybe tag the Lhotse face at 7,000 meters, and then come on back down and wait for the weather window. One of the reasons, there's a couple of reasons why this is happening and why it's changed dramatically. The biggest reason is the use of supplemental oxygen. They're using it at higher flow rates starting at Camp Two instead of the traditional Camp Three. And the second is that a lot of people are pre-acclimatizing at home using those hypoxia tents. And of course, we know that this year there's that Xenon expedition that's going to try to do it in a 1 week, and we'll see how that happens. They won't be leaving home until mid-May, so we'll follow them and see what happens. Let's see. In terms of ladders, in the Icefall, one of the four ladder spans, it collapsed in the lower Icefall on Friday. Not unusual. Happens all the time. Happens throughout the season, and that's why the Icefall doctors are on 24/7 office hours, and they have been using drones to carry ladders and ropes up to Camp One, and also to carry them up into the Icefall. Speaking of drones, one of these $70,000 DJI Flycart 30 drones made by Drone Technology. Apparently, he got hit by a wind gust. The rotor stopped. It has a parachute. Well, it cost $70,000, so it should have a parachute. And so the parachute deployed and it landed safely at the bottom of a crevasse, according to Mike Hamill. Mike sent me a note and just said that they've been flying helicopter drones. I've been flying drones out of the top helicopter pad, and one crashed in the icefall and winds. The parachute deployed, and our Sherpa team knows where it is, but it hasn't been retrieved as of yesterday. That was he sent this to me on Friday. Hopefully, they'll be able to recover it without any damages. So I haven't heard if they got it or not. If it's at the bottom of a crevasse, it may be unretrievable. But $70,000. A Nepali company bought two of them, so now they have one. Another client told me that it's been really quiet. No drones have been flying for the last 3 or 4 days. So maybe they've got a little gun shy losing this thing. It's a big investment to lose. I don't know if they're insured or not. I was thinking about this with these drones flying over. I'm not really a big fan of it. I really think they should just use a couple of helicopters and take it all the way to Camp Two, take those loads up. And as far as bringing trash down, well, I think that's up to each individual climber. I think there's an unintended consequences with using drones to fly down trash that people will just, throw stuff all over the place, say, somebody else will pick it up and the drone will take it down. Bad idea, bad idea. I think everybody should be responsible for themselves and practice leave no trace principles. But the flight path for the drones have been arranged in such a way that they're not flying over the route. So think about that. This thing carries, I don't know how much it weighs, but it can carry 15 kilos or about 33 pounds of a payload. And if that came down on top of you, yeah, that's going to mess up your hair. Not going to be a good deal at all. Let's see. Next week, we're going to see base camp continue to fill up. I've heard several people say it's kind of quiet right now, and not a lot of people have arrived yet. That's also becoming more and more common as the expeditions get shorter, just like the fewer rotations. So I'm sure next week, look, we're almost to May 1st, and historically, some people have actually finished their acclimatization rotations by now, just waiting for the ropes to get to the summit so they can be the first ones to go. But we'll see how it all goes. Let's see. On the other 8,000 meters, so it's all over on Annapurna, as we know. There were about 40 summits, and sadly, two Sherpas died there. On Dhaulagiri, Seven Summits Club, they've arrived at base camp. There's about 15 permits issued for that mountain across only two teams. Kanchenjunga, Seven Summits Trek, and Altitude Junkies are two of the four teams that are there. 40 people have permits for climb that. And Makalu, the ropes are already to the summit. They were put in last week, and now they're just waiting for some good weather and also for everybody to arrive at the mountain. Madison Mountaineering has a team there. One of their first times that they're climbing on Makalu, and there's 66 people that have permits across the teams. So we talked a lot about going into the Khumbu Icefall for the first time. And, I've done these narratives in the past. They're proven to be popular. So I'm going to do a narrative on first steps into the Khumbu Icefall. For those on the Nepal side, many began their first rotation on Everest and not on a nearby peak like Lobuche or Pumori. The first steps in the Khumbu Icefall. I call it the troll of the Western Khum. And you've got to pay a toll to the troll to go through the icefall. Of course, videos and selfies of crossing the ladders have become standard media on social media, and they're always a winner whenever I give my talks about climbing Mount Everest. I've got a great one where I'm holding a camera and I've got a video of my feet crossing across the ladder. It always gets a lot of oohs and ahs. Usually there's about 20 or 30 crevasses, but this year, 2025, there appears to be just a very small number of ladder crossings, probably less than 10, maybe around 5. Some of these ladders are also vertical because where there's ice walls in the ice fall, they'll put up a ladder instead of having people use a rope and Jumar up a rope. Honestly, a lot of people just don't have the skills to climb that level of ice, even though they really should if they go to Everest. But climbing up a ladder with crampons is one thing. Coming back down is another one. It's easier to go up than it is to go down. Well, you have a lot of anxiety about the ice fall. You've heard about it for years, as long as you've been planning to go climb Everest. You've read about it. You've heard these horrible statistics that more people die in the ice fall than anywhere else. That's not true. More people die elsewhere than in the ice fall. But be that as it may, still a number of people have died, including 16 Sherpas in 2014 when a serac let loose onto the ice fall. They had no chance. So you're having dinner the night before, and your lead guide comes in and says, okay, tomorrow, let's get up around 1 o'clock in the morning. Let's go have breakfast, and then we're going to go up the ice fall to Camp 1. You develop sweaty palms. Sweat develops beads of sweat on your forehead. Your heart picks up a beat. Okay, this is real. You knew this day was coming, so you already have your pack ready. It's all packed for Camp 1 and 2. You're going to take a couple of things you're going to leave up there. Like you're going to take your extra 20 degree below zero Fahrenheit down sleeping bag. You're going to take your extra pad. You're going to take a few extra layers, things that you know you won't need back at base camp, and you're going to leave those cached up at Camp 2. That way you don't have to carry them back up. Next time, maybe you'll carry your down suit, or maybe you'll get a Sherpa to carry it for you. All you have in your pack is about 2 liters of water, an energy bar, goggles, gloves. Always have sunglasses tied around your neck, even though it's dark, because once that sun comes up, it is blinding. So you're sitting in your tent cross-legged. You're looking at all your gear laid out on the floor. It's a yard sale. You also got to include your boots, your crampons, ice axe, your harness, everything. It's no wonder that you maxed out your credit card every month for the last year buying all this stuff. It's cold tonight. As you crawl in your sleeping bag, it's going to go well below zero. You strip down to your merino wool tops, bottoms. You put on your sleep socks, pull on your cap, zip up your bag. So now only your nose is exposed. This lasts exactly 12 seconds in 12 minutes and 56 seconds before you become claustrophobic. You flop around like a crocodile. I call it the crocodile roll. You roll over on the other side. Oh, that's better. This lasts longer, 23 minutes and 83 seconds. Up, roll over to the other side. Okay, this works. You close your eyes. Then all of a sudden, this image comes into your mind. You're about to go cross the ice fall. Your altitude watch has an alarm on it, but it's so quiet it sounds like a mosquito rather than an alarm. But it goes off at 1:30 a.m. This morning you've got the drill down. Doesn't matter that you only slept 20 minutes ago. You barely got any sleep at all, but it's time. Again, you've got this down. As you get dressed, you pull those boots on, crawl out of your tent, you grab your sharps, and you stumble to the dining tent. Up, your headlamp. You forgot it. Back to your tent to get it. You have a cup of tea with an absurd amount of sugar, thinking this will help you. You eat some eggs that are on a piece of toast. It all goes down pretty good. Tastes good. You pass on the porridge, but you know the Sherpas are eating a wild concoction called sampa. It's made up of roasted barley that's pounded into a paste and softened with either hot water, milk, or tea, making it like a porridge in texture. Sometimes they roll it into a ball. That way they eat it like a donut. Of course, it's washed down with Tibetan tea, a pot of black tea flavored with yak butter and salt. Salt? Okay. They climb like a Sherpa. What can you say? You begin to reconsider thinking that you need to eat like a Sherpa. So maybe you could climb like a Sherpa. Yeah. Good luck with that. Standing outside, you wander over to the puja altar. That's where you smell juniper boughs slowly smoking away. There's a small flame, but a pungent smoke in the air. One of the Sherpas walks over. He stands directly into smoke. In an impressive display of purpose and control, he gently waves the rising smoke onto his body. He moves his hand with an open palm 3 times, chanting a Tibetan prayer with each wave. And then he walks towards the icefall. Every Sherpa on our team goes through this same ceremony. A few of the members also do it. I'm going to do it. Everything helps. By now, you know the Sherpas respect your beliefs and never force any of these traditions on anyone, but they welcome everyone to participate. Your camp is in the middle of the sprawling Everest Base Camp. It takes about a half an hour to reach the spot where you put on your crampons. It's called Crampon Point. How original, you think to yourself. The entire area is teeming with Sherpas, members, icefall doctors, a random yak, and an odd dog. You bend over to put your crampons on. Sometimes this time it feels different. It's not a halfway trip. It's not a training exercise. It's the real deal. Your heart rate picks up a bit. You realize that bending over has caused you to stop breathing for a moment. One big gasp, and you're back to normal. You're 17,500 feet, about to go to 20. Go. The route follows an unknown trail, only visible to the Sherpas. It leads up gently and it takes a massive leap over an icy hill and down to a pool of half-frozen water. Who put the rope through a lake? You sidestep the water. Now is not a good time to go take a dip. The walking continues as you glance ahead and see a long line of bright headlamps ahead of you. The sky is clear, making it even colder, but no snow, no wind. Thank you. You begin to do the advanced math in your head. It's 2 a.m. It should take 6 hours to camp 1, so that which puts you there at, hey, is that a dog? Your personal Sherpa is Dawa Sherpa. You've gotten to know him over the last few days. He's a young man, maybe 28. He's married, has a small 2-year-old. He lives in the rolling area, a bit away from the Khumbu. If you summit with him, it'll be his 14th summit. His English is very, very good. He appears highly skilled. And then he tells you, yes, I'm an IFMGA certified guide. You're impressed. The route continues. You're clipping onto the thin white nylon rope. It goes upward and upward. And your breathing quickens faster, deeper. The sweat beads on your brow are leaking into your eyes in the below zero still air. You don't want to go fast, but you feel pressure to keep up with Dawa. About this time, a Sherpa train passes you by. 11 Sherpas, nose to tail, huge packs on their back. They zoom past you as if you're standing still. You are. Dawa barks at you. Stop! Let them pass! You gladly heed the command as you try to take in more air in now your cold lungs, appreciating the slight rest step. Big air comes in. Big air goes out. A hard cough. You don't want to get the Khumbu cough. A pattern is formed. Now you understand what everybody meant when they said the most essential piece of gear is your buff. Warm up the air before it goes into your lungs. The train goes by, and you and Dawa pick up the pace again. Dawa's industrial strength headlamp could land airplanes, but he moves it gracefully and gently weaving around obstacles and gaining elevation like a bird. Suddenly, the awareness in the back of his head informs you that he must slow his pace down. His charge, his member, you, is going pretty slow. It'd be rude to leave you behind. Dawa laughs to himself. Upon reaching the end, the fixed rope, the Icefall doctors had put it in before. You bend down, you clip it onto your carabiner. You got your Jumar out. The safety line is tethered back to your harness with nylon weapon. It's been drilled into you. Never, ever, never, under any circumstance, Climb unclipped. Ever. Always stay clipped into the fixed line everywhere on the mountain. It's been drilled into you so many times you know it. You're moving steadily now. You're gaining altitude in the ice fall. It's the early hours of the cold. It's still dark. There's no moon tonight. Maybe for some at night there'll be a moon. The Sherpas often call that the auspicious date, when there's a full moon. That's the best time to summit Mount Everest. Headlamps illuminate the way, but so do the long lines of climbers ahead of you. The thin white nylon line. It's another part of the climbing Everest that you come to know. The nylon fixed rope will be your best friend. Soon the conga line comes to a halt. It's just you and Dawa because Dawa has no patience for slow climbers, and he passes each one of them, pulling you along in a slipstream. While you struggle to breathe, you know it's a good sign as you'll get to the summit, and he won't let anybody or anything slow you down. The ladder's not always straight across a crevasse. In fact, rarely. They can go down, straight up. They can be pushing at an angle, anything but horizontal. There can be dual ladders in high traffic areas, sometimes an up ladder and a down ladder. Approaching the ladder, you pause for inspection. How many ladders is this one? Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. If it's 4 or 5, it bounces in the middle. Watching a Sherpa crossing ahead on a forfer, you see it wobble. Left, right, up, down. It's like climbing in 3 dimensions. There's safety lines in place. You look at the anchors where they're secured to the ground, or more accurately, to the snow or ice. A thin nylon line is tied in a squirrely knot through a hole in a bent piece of aluminum. A picket. That's all? Looking across the crevasse, you see the rope is tied onto an ice screw. But yesterday's hot sunlight has the hole melted out, and the ice screw is bobbing freely. Now, it's not going to catch you if you fall. Don't fall. Dava looks at you as he takes a second carabiner off your harness. He goes first. Clipping into both beaners into 2 safety ropes on either side of the ladder, he steps onto the first rung. Then the second. Without so much of a pause, he's across and he's standing there. You can almost hear him now in a deep John Wayne voice. Okay, kid, I showed you how to do it. Now get on with it. Knowing you have little choice, you approach the ladder as one would approach one of those monkeys you saw in Kathmandu. Carefully, slowly, you move your feet towards it. Bending over, you grab the right-hand safety line. Then, with your other hand, you press the locking mechanism of your carabiner inward and clip onto the line. Repeating this procedure, you're now hooked onto both safety lines. Your line is now in the hands of some makers of space-age technology that's used mostly in socks. Your crampon front points juts out from your climbing boots as you focus on the first rung. The question is whether to put the mid part of your sole on the rung or gingerly put the front points on one rung and the back of your boot on the trailing rung. The latter risks being caught if you lean forward, forcing the rung tightly against your crampons. Only a Cirque du Soleil move would free you. Some people even have to take their boot off if the crampon gets stuck on the ladder. You don't want to do that. Seeing the Sherpas make this move gives you confidence, so you move forward. The right boot settles on the ladder. Then your left foot moves quickly in place. You hold onto the rope with a grip so tight that if you fell, your shoulder would dislocate before your grip would release. Your hands are slightly behind you when pulling the line taut. All of a sudden, the line goes taut from both sides. Teammates have squatted down at both ends of the ladder to pull the rope tight, making it more of a rail. You appreciate this and you return to favor at the next crossing. One step is followed by another, then a third. Your eyes are focused on the ladder, your boot, your knee, anything other than that seemingly bottomless pit below you, an icy grave if you fell. You realize that you haven't taken a breath in the middle of the span. At 18,000 feet, this is a big mistake, so you pause and take a big, big, deep breath. Looking up, you see Sherpa, strangers, and a black dog looking at you. You wonder, wow, it's now evident that your slow pace is holding up everyone, including the dog. Your humility lesson continues. A few more steps and your foot reaches the snow-covered ground. You take another deep breath, you're off the ladder. Unclipping, you stand up straight. You've been slouching the whole time. Your mother would be unhappy. Looking around, you feel good. The dog bounds up the ladder and leaves you behind. Oh my, I never dreamed this would be happening. The climb through the icefall continues, touching on famous points. The first ladder, the football field, the popcorn, and the high ladders up top. When you think it's all over, the route turns on itself. Now a slight yellow glow illuminates the area. Good, you think. Daylight will bring strength, but also instability. You pick up the pace. The final steps at the top of the Icefall are someone's idea of a really poor joke. After gaining almost 2,000 feet, you haven't paid the price to the troll. Apparently not. As a set of two vertical ladders presents itself to you. Make that two sets of 6 ladders lashed together to help you, an aspiring climber, should be an expert if you're on Everest, scale a 100-foot ice wall. Your team back home will be sad to note that you're using a ladder and not climbing with your crampons like a real climber. Just before the Game of Thrones ladder section, Dawa has grown a bit impatient with you and the gap widens. You know you're almost at Camp 1, so this doesn't worry you. As the area lights up, you pass a ridiculously high vertical ice serac. It looks like something Hong Kong would scale and beat its chest from the top. You really don't give it any notice as you pass. The terrain is now pretty flat. You're walking on a snow-covered sidewalk for a very, very short distance. Looking ahead, you see the ladders. And then you hear it, a huge crash and explosion of ice. The tower is falling directly on the route where you and Dawa were just moments earlier. Dawa stops in his tracks and looks back at the evidence of the collapse. A handful of refrigerator-sized ice blocks cover the trail, along with a million tiny little ice blocks. He looks at you. You look at him. No words needed to be said. You move on. Somehow you overcome the ladders and enter the western cone. But then the reality sets in. You thought at the top of the ladder, at the Icefall, it'd be an easy walk just to saunter to Camp 1. But no. More ups and downs, more ladders to scale. Dawa glances at you as he moves on, putting on his sunglasses already out, knowing that the top of the Icefall is full-on George Hamilton bright sun. I'm not sure how many people will get that reference. You stop and take off your pack and search in each pocket for your $250 sunglasses that you bought to avoid snow blindness. You finally find them just as your eyes are in pain and drying out. Best laid plans. You try to keep up with Dawa as he floats across the lower Coombe again. You're seriously tired, seriously dehydrated, and experiencing a serious crisis of confidence. About that time, Dawa pauses at the top of one of the endless glacier ditches. When you arrive at the top, all your neurosis is exposed. You look down at your yellow boots against the white, pure snow created by Everest and Lhotse snowfall. We made good time, Dawa says and trots off. Stunned, you are now one of the world's best climber? Really? Certainly better than anyone else in your team, even though half of them are already Camp 1. Yeah, right. Finally, you arrive there at Camp 1. Once again, you're humbled by the accuracy and the attention of detail shown by the Sherpas. A row of yellow tents is precisely lined up. It's almost like they use a laser to line them up side by side. This time you're going to share your tent with a tent mate. You two have already bonded, so it's an easy choice and you find a tent. Your pack drops heavily to the ground. Standing up, you look around for the first time. Lhotse steals the view. But Nuptse to your right is very impressive. You pause, you think about Uli Stek. To your left is the mother of all mountains. You unstrap your sleeping pad from the outside of your pack and pull out your -20 sleeping bag. Roll it out to let the down loft up. You throw it on top of your pad and you slide in next to your tent mate. Lying on top of an ethically sourced down sleeping bag that'll keep you warm at the South Pole, it dawns on you. It's well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the tent, the sun blazing in the western Coombe. Not a whiff of wind, no movement of air. You're at 19,500 feet, lying on a layer of moving glacial ice, and you're on fire. About that time, the dog comes over for a snack. Welcome to Camp 1. Climb on. This is Alan. And remember, memories are everything.
The podcast on AlanArnette.com is sponsored by Summit Coach, helping aspiring climbers worldwide to reach their dreams.